In a remote village nestled between mountains, there stood an old, abandoned house that seemed as if it were created to be a terrifying mystery. Its windows were shattered, the doors cracked, and time had eaten away at its walls, making it appear more like a tomb. Every evening, the villagers claimed they heard strange sounds emanating from within, sounds that had no explanation. Faint whispers, an invisible child's cries, or the creaking of doors opening and closing on their own. People avoided getting close to the house, but no one truly knew what had happened there. It was said that the house had once been the home of a peculiar man named Ibrahim. He was a scientist, deeply engrossed in mysterious experiments, but no one really knew what he was studying. One dark night, Ibrahim suddenly disappeared, leaving behind walls full of secrets. From that moment on, the house became the talk of the village, and everyone steered clear of it. But one day, a group of young explorers arrived in the village. Among them was Omar, who had a passion for all things mysterious. When he heard about the house, he and his friends decided to venture there and uncover its secrets. The village was quiet, and the sky was overcast, but Omar's heart was filled with excitement. He told his friends with a nervous smile, "We won't leave until we uncover the truth." They reached the house as the sun was setting. The thick trees surrounded it, as if trying to hide it from the world, and the darkness grew deeper as they got closer. They pushed open the rusty iron door with difficulty and entered. Inside, everything was unnaturally still. The rooms were covered in dust and decay, as if time had stopped there years ago. They began to wander through the place, but something felt off, like there was an eye watching them. In one of the dark rooms on the lower floor, they found a door locked tightly. It was strange because the door seemed to have been closed recently. They approached it and tried to open it, and after a few moments, the lock broke, and the door creaked open with an eerie sound. Inside the room, there were old papers scattered across the floor, and among them was a note written in an uneven hand: "If you are reading this, know that I tried to summon something that should not be here, and I failed. Do not go any further." Omar's heart raced as he read the words. What had Ibrahim tried to summon, and why had he left this message? As they discussed the note, they suddenly heard footsteps coming from the floor above. Heavy footsteps, as if someone was dragging their feet across the ground. They froze in place, then slowly began to ascend toward the source of the sound. When they reached the upper floor, they discovered the sound was coming from an empty room. There was no one there. At that moment, the lights they were holding suddenly went out, and a suffocating silence took over the house. Darkness enveloped them, pressing down on their chests. In that dark stillness, each one of them began to hear strange sounds. Whispers calling their names, footsteps behind them. It felt as though unseen beings were watching them closely. Then, suddenly, something appeared at the end of the hallway. It was a massive shadow, slowly moving toward them. They tried to run, but the walls seemed to shift around them, and the doors they passed through disappeared and reappeared in different places. They were trapped. As the entity drew nearer, they felt as though time had stopped, and they were face to face with something they couldn't escape. In a moment of desperation, one of the friends decided to sacrifice himself. Gathering his courage, he grabbed an old lamp in the room and smashed it, hoping to draw the entity toward him. At that moment, a small door in the wall opened, as if it were the only key to their escape. The group rushed toward the open door, but they didn't dare look back. They made it out of the house, but they couldn't bring themselves to look back. Everything behind them had disappeared, and the darkness had swallowed any trace of the house. Days passed after their escape, but each one of them began to suffer from strange nightmares, as if something had followed them. There was something in the shadows, something watching them from afar. And even though time went on, they couldn't shake the feeling that the entity they left behind in the house had found a way to reach them. In the village, people refused to speak of the house, even claiming they had never heard of anything strange happening there. But if you looked closely at night, in the dark corners, you might notice a shadow following you from a distance, silently lingering, waiting for the right moment to show itself again.